same color.
Yeah, that's a,
I'm not used to it. Don't worry.
yeah. Yes, I think so. Connecting.
It's wonderful to see such great turnout tonight, and I hope everyone had a chance to get some pizza and some drinks. And we're really excited to get started. So my name is Tori McIntyre, and I'll be moderating this evening. I wanted to start by reflecting over the past few years how organizations have been so focused on what AI can do. However, today the question has really started to shift, and it's more focused on how do we deploy AI. How do we deploy AI in a way that's trusted by people, deeply embedded in our workflows, and creating real business value that's impactful and measurable? Tonight we have a really fantastic panel of leaders who are going to help us answer just this question. So tonight we're going to hear from each of them on perspectives within their areas of expertise, and then we're going to come together for a panel discussion on what's working well, what's harder than expected, how are they driving trust and adoption, and lastly, where they see the biggest opportunities ahead. We really hope that everyone can leave tonight with some new ideas, new insights, and most importantly, something that you can bring to your teams tomorrow and take action on right away. Alright, before we welcome our speakers, we're going to hear from AGIV leadership, followed by Invest Ottawa. So, hi, please come forward.
Hey everyone, my name is Hai, so if you're wondering how that is spelled, it's just H-A-I. Forgot my name tag, so I just want to put that out there. So has anyone here been to our original event series, AI Tinkers? Raise your hand. Okay, so we're the same people. So 2023 to 2024, that was when we were trying really hard to get people to start building with LLMs and agents. And now what we're seeing in our industry is that people are having issues moving things from proof of concept to production. And this sentiment was resonated at places like the AI Engineer World's Fair or LangChain Interrupt in places like New York City, San Francisco, and we're seeing that we're working with our customer as well. So that's why we started a new event series called AGIV Industries. So as you look around, people are in the industry. They are either building proof of concepts or trying really hard to move from POC to production. And this spans across go-to-market, marketing, FP&A, accounting, sales, and more. So so talk to everybody in the room. We have curated this room really hard, not using AI. I would strongly suggest that you do that. So we'd like to start our event with, one quick nugget of insight of the month. Has anyone here used Fable or Fable from Anthropic in the last couple days? Okay, you're very lucky because as of like a day or 2 days ago, you cannot do that anymore. And we might be seeing a trend or unprecedented way of countries and governments being able to restrict access to certain models and intelligence, which is called intelligence now. So if your company depends on a certain type of intelligence, you're cooked if that is taken away from you. So there's a couple of ways that you can kind of like mitigate this risk. It is a risk for every single company. In this room right now, I'm sure you're here because you're using the AI somewhere, right? One, you want to think about your harness. So if you're using Claude Code or Codex, those harnesses are the software that wraps around the models and it allows the model to become agentic. And those harnesses work really well with OpenAI and Anthropic models, but not necessarily anything else. So what you can do instead is you can look at open source harnesses or harnesses that are model agnostic. So for example, LangChain's Deep Agent is production ready. Pi Agent, which ships with OpenClaw, or anything like OpenCode or anything that doesn't tie you to one or two providers. So you want to think about that. So own your harness and also own your model. So if you want to take a step further, think about using open source models. So Cohere, one of Canadians' probably only large language model trainer, launched a new small model the same day that Anthropic launched Fable called Cohere North Code Mini. Very small, underperforming, but it's a good thing that they're doing that. We're not talking shit about code here tonight. We are here to encourage that because we need more companies to launch open source models and open weight models. Because with those models, you can fine-tune them to do very specific tasks, which means if the API goes down, you don't lose access to the entire thing. And one last thing I want to say is that want to show off my Aura Ring 5 here. You guys are. Anybody has an Aura Ring? Raise your hand. Okay, those are cool people. You guys are my people. Anyways, not to digress too much, but one last thing, you want to have a LLM gateway or a router, or model router, so that in production, whenever something unstable happens, you can route your requests to something else at runtime. So those are some of the things that I would personally do to mitigate those risks. And if you want to chat more about those things, talk to the people around the room, talk to us from AGIV Industries. And now I want to bring up my co-founder, Chief Ecosystem Officer, Nelda, to talk about our community. So give it up for Nelda.
Hi everyone, so great to see you. I'm Nelda, like Zelda, and I want to ask you all a question. So, raise your hand if you consider yourself an AI champion. Okay. Raise your hand if you are not. Okay. Now raise your hand if you have no idea what an AI champion is. Okay. Don't be shy. Well, an AI champion is someone who builds new things with AI because they want to, and not because they're told to. There's that intrinsic and excited vibe they have and energy that they bring what they learn on their own or through like self-learning programs and education into their work and get so excited to get their other colleagues into it as well. Now, title and seniority doesn't matter when it comes to AI champions. And whether they're generating their own ideas and finding problems they can build, or it does. So, given that definition of an AI champion, raise your hand if you are an AI champion. Come on, we need all of them. There we go. Kind of awkward? I'm just kidding. Now, here's something we understand as well about AI champions. Being an AI champion is a very hard and often lonely road, and especially inside an organization. Like, who can you nerd out to? And what can you talk about? Or what will they understand? So that's what we're hoping to build with this community here at AGI Ventures. We're hoping that these events will be an opportunity for you to find your people in this room, learn how to apply what you learn from our panelists and our speakers immediately as soon as you go back to work. So if you want to join our community online, we have a LinkedIn group you can join, and also a Slack as well. And to the AI champions. May we motivate them, may we inspire them, and may we foster their growth. All right? Okay, moving to Jenna.
I brought notes because I'm just under a month into this new role. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you to AGI Ventures for bringing us together. I'm Shannon Ferguson. I'm the Senior Manager of Early Stage Programs here at Invest Ottawa. So, if you're not familiar with Invest Ottawa, we are the lead economic development agency in Canada's capital. So, we help founders and technology companies build, grow, and scale successful businesses. So through the IO Venture Path, we help entrepreneurs accelerate their journey from idea to scale up. So the Venture Path currently supports more than 600 companies across a wide range of growth stages. Our goal is really simple. It's to meet founders where they are with the right support, resources, expertise, and connections at every stage of their journey. Tonight, I wanted to briefly highlight two programs that are often the entry points into that journey. So it's IO Ignition and IO Flex. Has anyone here heard of these programs? Okay, a couple of you. Awesome. So Ignition is actually our 10-week bootcamp that runs every quarter. So it's designed for founders who have an idea and something that you really want to validate. So through customer discovery, mentorship, practical startup training, these participants really learn how to build a strong foundation for their tech company. And then once the founders go through Ignition, many continue on to Flex, which is more self-directed. It's a support program that provides ongoing access to business resources, expert advisors, some I've seen here tonight, workshops, events, and really the broader innovation community. So it allows founders to really engage at the pace that works for their business while they continue to access those supports and connections that they need to grow. So whether you're exploring a new idea or building your first product or preparing to scale, the IO Venture Path could be really designed to help you take the next step. So there is some more information over on the table where the food is. You can also go to our IO Venture Path website. There's a quiz on there that can help you find what program would be right for you. So it just takes a couple minutes and it can really help you identify the program that would be the best fit. So again, thank you to AGIV Ventures, and I look forward to meeting more of you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Nelda and Shannon. It was great to hear from you all. All right, we're going to jump into our speaker portion of the evening. And our first speaker this evening is Andy, Director of Enablement at Knak. Andy has a front row seat to how organizations are leveraging their data today to drive really strategic go-to-market solutions. Now, candidly, I just met Andy about 10 minutes ago, but I am sure that he would be the first to tell you that AI implementations will fail if they're not fed meaningful data. Lots of teams are focusing on the models they're using, the tools they're building, but there needs to be focus on gathering the insights that matter and leveraging those. So tonight, Andy will be talking about how to avoid generic indicators, as well as how to create more impactful AI-powered solutions for go-to-market strategies. So please welcome Andy to the stage.
Yeah, please, that'd be cool. There we go. Perfect. Okay, for you over there. Are these on? Could you turn one of these on for me? I'm a bit of a walker when I talk. Hello? Hello? Oh, perfect. Okay. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. Honestly, it's a real treat. I'm totally nerd out on this stuff, and I'm really happy to be in a room with a lot of folks that probably do a lot of the same stuff that I do, and for that, I'm totally grateful. As I said, or as someone said, my name is Andy, and I'm Director of Enablement at Knak. For those of you that don't know, Knak is a marketing production platform based out of Ottawa. And I want to start off this talk just by, everything that I have ever created with AI or the tools associated has always been born out of frustration. Frustration of either the tool that I'm trying to use to do the thing or the process that I have to follow in order to get the thing that I want to do. And that's where I found myself when I was supporting a large group of sales folks and seeing them time after time going after the same accounts, trying the same thing, and getting the same results, which was not converting or not having the message that they should have in order to convert the account. And it's not just us that was doing that. Our ICP, our total addressable market, whatever you want to call it, we go after companies that are about 1,000 plus people that are based in North America that have marketing automation users. And I can go to ZoomInfo, I can go to all these different companies, and I can say, hey, give me a list of this stuff, and it's pretty easy to do. And everybody else is doing that too. So all of our competitors are going to those same companies, looking for the same data to do the exact same thing. So we need to think a little bit differently. The reframe that I like to think about with being able to convert prospects into customers is to leverage who has actually bought from us before and why did they buy. And I'm not talking about the reason that the salesperson put in our CRM to say, drop down, yes, there was this thing, this is why they converted, and away I go. That's not what I'm looking for. That's not what can help us to get to the point where our message can truly resonate. And so what we can do is look at like what I call my hierarchy of truth, which is like what customers do is the top. What customers say is second level. What salespeople say that customers do is third, and then our CRM is basically the fourth level. It's like, I don't know who put that in there, I don't know how old it is, so like it's kind of might be right, but I can't trust it for sure. And so that's where we begin. You take a look at your own data. You look internally to see what our customers are saying throughout the sales cycle to understand what pains they're exhibiting. But there's two types of pain. There's table stakes where literally everyone has it. It comes up in every single call. I think our top pain was developer dependency, and it was like 87% of all calls showed up that was an issue, that was a pain. And it also showed up in almost all of our closed lost as well. And so you need to look at the differentiation, the converting pain, the stuff that actually makes a difference, so that you can focus on the folks that are here to buy right now, versus those that just decide to do nothing. And if there's any salespeople in the room, you know that the do nothing is like your biggest competitor. So what do? Well, you sort your pain by win rate. So now we're in a place where it makes it so much easier to be able to take a very large amount of data and be able to put it through some analysis to come out on the other side so that you can say, oh, did you know that our top pain point converts about 70% higher than our other pain points? So maybe we should focus our messaging on that pain point versus all the other ones, like developer dependency, where our marketers that we sell to, they rely on HTML developers to get the stuff done that they need to do. But everyone has that, and it doesn't convert. Now, what we found at Knak, when we took a look at our data, we did an analysis on what converts for closed won a heck of a lot better than closed lost. Two main themes popped up: brand fracture and production trap. Brand fracture, you have a bunch of marketing people that are managing a bunch of brands, and they have multiple systems that they have to use in order to send out these emails to these prospects that they want to eventually convert. And in there is a huge amount of frustration. Remember that frustration I was talking about before? Well, everybody feels it in some capacity. And when the frustration is bad enough, people tend to buy. The second, drowning in email production, which means there is a heck of a lot of emails going out. There are developers that are actually hand-coding these emails. There is a lot of work being done to make sure that those campaigns get out the door. And so now we've taken a look at our data, we can understand who converts and why. Cool, what do you do with that? Because I can't go to ZoomInfo and say, give me all of the accounts that feel brand fractured. You can't do that. What you have to do is to be able to infer what would this public footprint look like for this specific pain that I'm trying to convert? And what does that look like in practice? You have to turn each of those pain points into a public signal that you can look at and you can decide, yes, this pain is happening right now for this customer, and this is a very high converting pain that we know our customers buy each and every day. And here's a few examples. A new brand pops up on a subdomain after an acquisition. Different maps, so different marketing automation platforms across those subdomains. Mismatched brand identities in live emails because they're subscribing to their emails and taking a look at them. Or they're rendering incorrectly, just straight up HTML is broken. There's open requisitions for HTML developers. Or you know what, they're sending a heck of a lot of emails. And we know on LinkedIn, they don't have a very large market. And so these are the public signals that you can leverage to be able to tell the story of that pain. Here's an example of one that happened just last week. So anonymized, for the heck of it, a database company recently acquired an AI company. But that's not the important part. The important part is that they just started to bring in-house the email program of that AI company, which means there is a marketing team that is now working multiple brands internally, as well as now they have multiple marketing automation platforms they have to deal with. That is the piece that you're looking for. That is the action that you can take. That is the message that you can send. So now, rather than relying on, I sell to 1,000 people companies in North America that have marketing operations teams, I can now sell to 1,000 people companies in North America with marketing operations teams that also happen to have the pain right now that we know converts with our product. The segment is the message. So rather than relying on putting something fancy together so that you can try to get in the door with these people that don't necessarily care about you, sales knows that, it hurts. You just say the true thing that you know. So rather than saying the generic thing, I'm gonna take a tangent. I'm gonna tell you a little bit of a story. I used to work at Ascent. Anyone know Ascent Compliance it used to be? And I started in 2018, and I was onboarded by Matt Whitaker, the founder, and one of the co-founders. And when he was onboarded me, he did something that was like truly incredible. He would go to our prospects' websites, and also a side note, for those of you that don't know, if you want to ship into Europe and not get held at the border, you should have really great reach and ROS declarations. Okay? So remember that for later. He would go to our prospects' websites and look at these reach and ROS declarations and say, hey, there's some issues here. And then he would write down those issues and he would write an email to the people that care about that at that company and say, you should do something about this. Because if you don't, your shipments will probably get stopped at the border. And that is valuable. Regardless of if that person ever talks to Matt again, that is a valuable piece of information they can use and act on. And so that's how I think about messaging. That the segment is the message. And then you can use an artifact about that message in order to help the conversation. And so what that looks like is this data company that just acquired this AI company that is now wrestling with templates across marketing automation platforms and dealing with brand drift because they can't get it just right between these platforms. Here's a playbook because I know your reality. I know what you do each and every day, and I know what works. And not asking for anything in return. And so the Matt Whitaker special is deposit it before you try to make a withdrawal. So top to bottom, look at Edward, leverage your own data to be able to understand what wins and what doesn't. Find the pain that converts, not the table stakes ones that you hear all the time. The ones that actually matter, the ones that do close business. Turn those things into public signals that you can track on an ongoing basis. Classify not just by your firmographics, but the pain that they exhibit. And then again, the segment is the message. And if you want to try this yourself, you don't have to get crazy on it. Just take closed won, closed loss data over the last month with the gong calls, toss them into a 1 million token context window, and then just ask the question. Find the pain that converts. Thank you.
Are we live here? Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Andy. All right, our next speaker is Jenna Potter, founder and CEO of Cormier-Iijima. Jenna is a former head of marketing turned marketing engineer and empowers brands by scaling their competitive intelligence. In a world where AI is becoming more and more capable, there's one problem that remains surprisingly human, and that's making AI sound like us. Jenna specializes in bridging this gap with her brands, focusing on AI brand, voice, and context. So tonight, Jenna will be sharing about how AI skills are only as strong as their context. Please welcome Jenna to the stage.
Hello everyone, thanks so much for having me here. Like mentioned, I'm Jenna, and this time last year I was an in-house marketer at a software company, and my resources were very limited, so I had to quickly learn how to build AI agents, and I started sharing them on LinkedIn, which led me to starting my own company, leaving that role, and now I do this full time. I help in-house marketing teams build AI agents, and I also have the media business side as well. So I'm going to teach you how to create a brand brain so that you're not creating AI slop. So AI made it easy to create content at scale, and that's what everyone is doing now. They're creating as much content as they can because they don't need a 100-person team to create thousands of pieces of content per month. But the problem is that it all sounds the same now, and I think you know what I mean. When you're scrolling on LinkedIn, when you're looking at a blog, it's the same type of writing, the same point of view, and you really can't differentiate between one brand to another because it's all created with Claude and ChatGPT, and it's essentially the same thing. Now they called it AI slop because it's so prevalent that they had to create a new term for it. And I know you probably don't love reading it, you don't want to waste your time reading it, but you feel this pressure to use AI to make your content and make your marketing campaigns, but you don't want to be the person that people are tuning out because it just sounds AI generated. So I was scrolling LinkedIn the other day and I saw this post from the head of marketing at Doist, and it stopped me in my tracks because she perfectly captured what it's like to read AI content on LinkedIn. And it's something that you don't outwardly comment on someone's post unless you're very vocal that, hey, this is AI slop, I don't want to read this. Most people are just silently scrolling past and they're losing trust in your brand. next time they see your face on the feed or your brand, they're going to ignore it because they know that what you're creating is AI generated and it's obvious to them, so they don't actually trust your point of view. They don't trust that you have the expertise to actually teach them or for them to pay you to do something for them. So the problem isn't prompting better, the problem isn't waiting for the better model to come out. Fable won't help you create won't help you not create AI slop. If you're still just using the same prompting method, just talking to ChatGPT or Claude, no matter what model you use, it's all going to sound the same as everyone else unless you have context, your unique point of view, your unique data that you spent years collecting, your customer calls, your customer feedback, even your internal conversations on Slack is excellent material to feed into the AI engines to create content that doesn't sound AI generated. All right, so 6 months ago, I started posting regularly on LinkedIn and YouTube. And I use AI to create pretty much everything I make. And because of my AI brand brain that I created and that I continue to grow, it's not just a stagnant brand brain that just stays there and is static from 6 months ago. It's constantly listening to everything I do and it's updated. So this is something that people don't expect whenever they create anything with AI, is that you have to invest a lot of time up front. So it's not just going to be 5 minutes of, telling AI be friendly, or, just telling it what words not to use. You have to build your own slop detector. There's no other better way to say this, but it's essentially a Claude skill that's trained on all of these AI tells. And it tells the AI what's true about you, so it's based on your real data. You're connecting your actual tools to Claude and ChatGPT through MCPs, and it's pulling this data live. And the most important thing is that you make it accessible across to your whole organization. So some people are very AI literate in your organization, and some people are not. So make this accessible to everyone. And then once you get a little bit more advanced, you should be creating multiple context files for different use cases in your business. So not one size fits all, but context files for different audiences, context files for different products you have, or different campaigns. And then make sure that that's always on. So it's always pulling from your Slack, your sales calls. So I have mine pulling from Granola. So every week it looks at my last week of sales calls and it updates my context files based on the real language people are using. And you can build this inside of Claude, Claude Code if you use Claude Code, or ChatGPT, or Gemini, whatever AI tool you use, you can build this. And of course, you need to do human editing as well. So whenever you build anything AI, it shouldn't be just build it and then ship it. You need to make sure that you're looking back and editing it to make sure that it matches. And I built a brand brain builder, just a Claude skill that you can download, and it'll run you through an interview process. So you can create your own brand brain in about 5 minutes. So I'll leave that up so you can. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jenna. All right, our next speaker of the evening is Sam. Sam is co-founder and CTO of Fellow. At Fellow, Sam leads the technical vision behind their note-taker companion. However, Sam's team recently has been exploring how AI agents can go from being an assistant to a true teammate. So tonight we're going to be hearing about Coda, Fellow's internal AI teammate. We're going to hear firsthand about what it takes to give an AI agent real responsibility within a growing business. Please welcome Sam.
Can I use this one?
All right, how's everyone doing? Good. My computer's not doing very good. All right, big thank you to AGIV, to Invest Ottawa for hosting us. Like Corey mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CTO of Fellow. And we actually started here in Invest Ottawa almost 9 years ago. Almost 10 years ago. So it's been quite the journey, but nice to be back here. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about Coda, which is something that we built internally. It's an AI teammate. I guess I'll just start first with a bit of background on what Fellow is and talk about how things have changed for us and our software development process in the last year. A lot has changed. And then I'll talk a bit more about Coda and the specifics on how we built that. Just a quick pitch on Fellow. It's an enterprise-grade AI agent for your meetings. We're really focused on privacy and security and giving you the best and most accurate summaries on the market. And we've seen a lot of interest recently because people are realizing that in order for AI agents to work well, they need to have access to good context. That's the same thing that's been said so far tonight. And the best source of context in a lot of cases is what's being discussed in your meetings. And so people are finding that it's really important to be digitizing that and capturing that. So the way that we build software at Fellow has changed a lot in the past year. I'll talk about some of the things that we've done right, I think, and some mistakes, as well as what we're thinking about now going forward. So some of the big changes I think that we've made, one is we really focused on building a shared context, shared knowledge, and systems that are accessible to everyone. So we make tools available, things like our internal dashboard, our data warehouse. These are all tools that are accessible to everyone within the company, and making those available has really helped. And encouraging experimentation and ownership. So we did hackathons to try to encourage people to learn how to use these AI tools. And we talk about them at our town halls weekly. And also, we changed how we structure our engineering team. One trend that we've kind of been seeing is individual contributors are now having to learn the skills that managers have because they're managing teams of agents. But on the flip side, we also see managers that are moving back to being ICs. So actually the former CTO of Shopify, I think, announced that he was moving to be an executive IC is the term. So we're seeing kind of this collapse of roles. So one of the changes that we made was that we're seeing flatter organizations. Managers can have bigger teams. And so the collaboration between product, engineering, QA, design, we made some changes around there. Happy to talk more about those, but I'll try to get more quickly to Coda. Some of the things we got wrong, we made some technical decisions last year, back when the models were not quite as good as they are. They were still very good, but they've improved a lot since. But we made some decisions based on the current capabilities of the models. We kind of overfit and not looking ahead with the expectation that they would keep improving, which I think that's been the case for the past 2 years. So we should probably keep that expectation that it'll also get cheaper as well. So we kind of shifted our tech stack. If you use Lovable or Bolt, any dashboard that you make uses a stack called Tailwind and ShadCN, and we wanted to kind of move our tech stack to be more on distribution so that models could code better with that. I don't know that I would make the same decision now because now the models are much better at in-context learning. And we also decided at the end of last year to include a question about AI usage as part of 360 performance reviews. And we were also looking at token usage dashboards, and I think that caused a lot of, I don't think it was the right lens to be looking at adoption. It's about encouraging people, not really not forcing it. And so the end goal that we actually care about is results. Are you shipping high quality features? Are you fixing bugs? We have less bugs, not just how much are you using AI that can be gained. And then where we're headed is to think about software engineering. I think we're going to start thinking about it more as industrial engineering, so lessons from factories, building closed loops. The coding is less of the bottleneck now, so the other pieces, QA, testing, deployment, reviews, those are where we're starting to see more bottlenecks. And investing in making sure that people know how to use these securely. So yeah, I'll get to, I'll start talking about Coda now, which is this internal teammate that lives in Slack. And we came at it from a couple different angles. So actually at the start of this year, we had 3 different people working on the same problem because we were facing, but from different angles. So we had an initial version that we had built last year called Beethoven, and that was helping us deploy. And then at the start of this year, we tried a couple of different approaches. We actually ended up building 6 different versions before we landed on what became Coda. And one of those versions was actually just running OpenClaw, which I don't know that I would do now. I probably wouldn't touch OpenClaw with a 10-foot pole. But one of the main decisions we were making, and the question that we had was, is the way that people at Fellow use AI assistants is that each person gets their own, so each person can connect it to their email, gets their own open cloud basically that they can have it answer their emails or help them, or is it a shared resource for the entire team? And we landed on the latter, and I think that was the right call. We actually saw, is anyone here at Shopify? I don't know. But they announced recently that they had built something called River, which actually we had done before and with the very same design. So I think it's the right call, because when it's working in the open and it works in public channels, those learnings are shared. Everyone can see and jump in and help. In terms of architecture, it was built, we tried a couple different sandboxes. We tried exec on the modal. We ended up just running on a regular EC2 instance. It's using PyAgent. I think Kai mentioned that at the beginning. It's the thing that actually powers OpenClaw. It's a very customizable agent framework. On top of that, we have the soul, that's from OpenClaw, skills, which it mostly builds itself, memory. The heartbeat is the thing that every 30 minutes it can go in and check Slack channels, see what's happened, update knowledge, and so on. It has a full copy of all of our repos, our code base, and that's in order to be able to actually answer product questions. So when somebody on the sales team asks a question about how Fellow works, it doesn't look at some documentation that might be out of date. It actually goes straight to the source code, reads it, and figures out how to answer that question from the source of truth. And finally, Canvas is able to host dashboards or other visualizations and mockups. And what's cool with Coda is that one of the properties of it is that it's self-modifying. It's the initial version I built with Cloud Code, but after that, once it was kind of bootstrapped, in order to change it, you just talk to it on Slack and it changes its own code. It manages all of its own skills and memories, and it's maintained by the team. So if someone on the team notices it does something wrong, or it thinks it should do something different, they just tell it to do that, and then it learns and it starts doing that. It also maintains its own infra, which is kind of cool. This is just a screenshot I thought I would show of the actual what the workspace interface looks like. I don't know. I probably won't have time to do like a live demo, but we can talk about that later. And what's actually the coolest feature that we did with Coda is this thing called a canvas. And so Coda has a full UI toolkit of our product that it can use. And so now we're seeing that our designers or even people on the sales team can go in and have this collaborative chat where it's kind of like cloud design or some of these lovable things, but it's very collaborative and it has all of our best practices already in place. And so, sales team will come here, have an idea for something, and then they can actually share that as a prototype. It's changed a lot of how we send ideas back and forth. We actually just send the prototype first to get feedback and then collaborate on that. And we use Coda for that. And then where Coda is headed next, we want to integrate it into even more product development systems that we have. Give it the ability to record videos, which it doesn't do today, but actually record a video of it using itself. Actually on this, what's very cool is the closed loop. So it takes a screenshot, it builds its UI, takes a screenshot and feeds it back and keeps iterating on that by default. That's not something I think a lot of other tools do. I haven't seen any that have that built in. So and set so importantly, but this actually it makes it work very well. Next up is also having it sync knowledge across repos. So right now it's knowledge, it's kind of specific to Coda. We want it to sync across everything. And then possibly extract the substrate, the harness, and separate that from the sandbox so that we can build other similar agents on top of that without having to rebuild everything separately. Just some takeaways from what we've used Coda for. I think it's important to pick tools if you're making decisions on what tools to use at your company. Really important to look at ones that work well with agents. So whether that's MCP or they have a good API, I think that's kind of is a baseline. You just need those things. Otherwise, these agents are not going to be effective. And really focusing on making sure that the systems of knowledge and context of those are shared and that they're updated and that they're well maintained. And then just to experiment, learn, and to keep iterating. And that's it.
This is actually I can, yeah. Should I do a quick demo? Yeah.
So this runs inside our Tailscale network. Does anyone use Tailscale or familiar? Yeah, very good. I highly recommend. So it's accessible only to people within the company. Let's see. So the sessions here, you can actually see all the sessions that it's been working on, and you can go into this and start a new one. And this is using that same high agent. They come with a UI framework as well. So you can ask it very similar to you would with Claude or ChatGPT, except that it's already connected and anyone has access to all of these systems of record, like our CRM or data dashboard. Some analytics on how much it's been used. I think in the past week, you can see how much its heartbeat is running, specific canvases that it has, token breakdown. We switched it recently to Opus 4.8. And I'll show the coolest part, which is this canvas. So let me find one. Here's one that I worked on.
Curious if they're using stream API costs or pass through such a subscription. Like this shit's expensive.
I'm on the hotspot, so it's slow. Here's another example. So this one, it's actually connected into our experimentation platform, and we can have it show which flags that we have. We had a big push to try to remove some of these flags and have less. And so this, it can read this dashboard and start new sessions about, this flag is no longer used by anyone, we should probably clean this up. So kind of have it work in the background and do cleanup work. I'll leave it at that. There's more in the show. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. All right, our final speaker of the evening is Ugo, Lead AI Deployment Engineer at Writer. Ugo works with enterprise organizations to deploy and scale AI in production. We all know how powerful a singular agent can be. As they become more integrated, the key challenge we face is orchestrating them across businesses effectively. So with that, Ugo will be talking to us about orchestrating agents at scale in production. Please welcome Ugo to the stage.
Well, thank you everyone, and thank you to the organizers, AGIV Industries, as well as the Best Hour for this incredible event. Really appreciate it, so thank you. So today I'm going to be talking about something that has been kind of keeping me up at night, because that's sort of what I do every single day, is thinking through how to actually get enterprise AI projects into production. And McKinsey recently came up with this study that I think it was both McKinsey and MIT have different studies, but essentially the consensus is that 95% of enterprise AI projects never get into production, which is insane if you kind of think about it, right? Because we're all using AI, we're all seeing all these amazing models, all these amazing agent harnesses that can do some incredible stuff, but why is it they're not really getting into production? What is the reason why they're getting into production? That's what we're going to be talking about today. And interestingly, if you look on LinkedIn, you would see that this year was the year of agents. So they're not quite making it into production yet. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So I deploy agents into production at Ryder. Currently, I do deployment engineering, and my job is to basically work with different customers to put different solutions into solve different problems. Now, cuts across different sort of sectors, like financial services, healthcare, marketing capabilities as well, things that we work on. If you're not familiar with Ryder, we're basically a platform for building agents. And essentially, we work with very large enterprises, so Vanguard, Templeton, Goldman, Uber. And what's very, very challenging about putting AI into production is what I'm going to be taking a look at right now. So, first and foremost, I want to describe what I believe an agent is, because we talk about agents quite a lot, and I hope you agree with me. So basically, an agent is essentially, for those who don't know, I'm sure a lot of people understand what agents are, but essentially an agent is basically a model that can reason, plan, and act. Essentially, very simply, that's what you do. You can kind of get into the sort of semantics about running a loop and all of this type of things. But essentially, they need some set of instructions to walk through. They need to be able to reason, and they need to be able to use tools that are within, that they've been given access to be able to solve different problems. But interestingly, this year, we started to see that agents have taken a huge leap, because they've been given computers, and that's what we call the agent harness. So you think about Claude Code, you think about Codex, these are agent harnesses. And they can do incredible things. When you babysit them through doing those things, they can do amazing things. And we've seen that coding is largely solved as a result. So I haven't coded in almost a year now, because the models are getting much better, and still my productivity is increasing. So it means that this thing actually works. But why doesn't it work when it comes to putting actual stuff that helps enterprises into production? So the reason is very, very simple, and I'm so glad that it came up in every single talk we just listened to. Context. Everyone talks about context. Context is so difficult. And if you've kind of been around the block in the ecosystem of technology, you know that through all the projects around AI, around transformation, you try to know that one of the problems has always been how to keep your data clean. So whether it was during the cloud era, where we were moving to the cloud, or right now with AI, context is a very, very big problem. So I find that a lot of the times, the AI model itself is not a problem. The harness is no longer a problem because this harness is amazing. It's just the fact that the context isn't quite where it needs to be. It's probably not available in the right format, so you have to think about cleaning it up, you have to make sure that you're passing the right context in, things of that nature. The next thing that we see is governance. A lot of AI applications right now that are in pilots have not really taken into account some of the core security requirements that are required to put something into production. Now, I mentioned this earlier on when he talked about open weights or open source models, which are becoming interesting for a lot of people. So when you have a closed source model as an example, and you're trying to put that into production in certain regulated industries, they might come up and say, your government people might say, I'm not quite sure how bias is handled in your model, or I'm not quite sure if your model is secure enough to keep my trading strategies or whatever it might be away from competitors and stuff like that. So governance becomes a huge blocker as to why people are not getting into production. The other piece is the wrong people are in the room. I have a very small story. I'm working on a project right now that is around medical record summarization. So take a bunch of medical records, extract information from them, and insurance companies use this to determine whether someone is eligible for a claim or not. So this is a high stakes thing. You have to meet very, very high bars of accuracy and things like that. But the very first sprint in the project, the product manager was staffed on the project, but had very, very little context about the end-to-end process. So the project wasn't really going anywhere. And then after a few weeks, we bring someone who's like a domain expert who understood the end-to-end, who understood what the inputs are, understood what good looks like, understands what bad looks like as well, and that sort of helped the project to start moving along. So this is such a critical aspect of what can make a project fail when it doesn't have the right people in the room actually being able to provide a context that is required to actually get the project moving along. So I want to talk to you today about how I go about it. This is just based on my own experience. So how do I think about going from 0 to 1 to scale? Because you have to start from 0. And starting from 0 is finding the problem, understanding the problem very, very well, understanding what the outcomes should look like, understanding the value that you're going to be bringing when you solve this particular problem. I want to make the first agent work, and once you do that, I want to scale it. So, it's a very, very simple thing, but you'd be very surprised at how this is such a huge problem in most projects. How to define what done looks like, and this is so critical for agents. If your agent doesn't quite know what done looks like, then very, very unlikely that you're going to be getting anything meaningful in production. So I think a use case like writing a fund commentary. So portfolio manager has access to all these funds they manage. They have to understand all the companies in that fund. They have to go look through all their filings. They have to look at their 10Ks, 8Qs, whatever it might be. They have to look at external information about each of the companies in that portfolio or in that fund to make a determination about the performance of the fund or predict what the performance of the fund could look like. This typically would take someone about 2 to 3 weeks to kind of understand that and write a really comprehensive fund commentary, and we're able to help them to go from 2 weeks to a few minutes for the first draft at the very least. So, and what we were able to do was work with those guys and download exactly what their problems were and what they do on a day-to-day basis, and then try to codify that into a skill where we pass the agent to be able to do the work. But it started with really being able to get very crisp about what the problem was and being able to solve it as a result. Alright, so what that means is that if you're able to decompose the work very, very cleanly into easily understandable steps, then good things tend to happen. So the first thing you want to think about is what starts this particular agent. So that could be a human being going and clicking a button. It could be something that runs on a schedule. It could be something that is triggered by a specific event that happens within your organization. So maybe for onboarding, as an example, a new client has been onboarded. That's an event. We're going to react to this event. Each of these events will have some data associated with it, which is context, and we use that to take steps to actually lead to a certain outcome. And once you can decompose this, you're usually on the right track towards building a really good agent. So this sort of mental model, as simple as it is something that I follow quite a lot and has been successful for me. Like I mentioned earlier on, context is where everything is, and I try to simplify things. If you haven't noticed, I try to always simplify things for myself first before I try to build. So I realized that if I simplify what context actually means, to me it means what happened, what needs to happen, and how to get it done. And when I define it in this way, it makes it much easier for me to be able to comprehend how to manage my context. Context management is so critical for the success of scaling your agent, and here's why. One, obviously for the accuracy reason that we talk about. Two is because it's also very, very related to cost. I don't think I need to bore you with all the news around how much people are spending on tokens and how crazy this thing is getting. I think Uber recently mentioned that they had burned through their engineering budget almost like 2 quarters in, on tokens and that's crazy. Like we're talking millions and millions of dollars. We're talking about a company that mistakenly lost $500 million to tokens spend. And a lot of what that is really not really curating your context, because you're letting the agent sort of run wild sometimes. And it decides how to kind of solve a particular problem. If the context is not clean, if you're not thinking through that particular approach of curating your context, then it's very, very likely that you're going to kind of get inefficient processes running by your agent. All right, so you have the right context. You've created an agent. Every time it runs, before you actually determine whether this thing is going into production or not, you need to ask yourself a few questions. The cool kids, the very smart ones, will call them evals. But I just like to simplify it and say, was it accurate? What did it cost? And how long did it take? So the very first time you try to build an agent, I think you can expect that it might not run very, very efficiently, which is fine, but of course you want it to be accurate. If it wasn't running efficiently, okay, you can always go back and tweak and optimize and refine to get to where you want to get to. I think we saw that in the Kodak example about how much it's iteration to get to the final outcome of that particular agent. All right, so now when it runs one time, we want to now scale it. So how are we should be thinking about scaling? So I think about these paradigms when I think about how a team should be able to use an agent. The very first one is one that is very common to us, which is the way we get work done, which is typically through Kanban boards. So we have a task board where humans and agents can live. So I was actually showing Harry this a few days ago for some of the projects I'm running. I decided to create a task board. It's a really cool project out there called Symphony that was published at Cormier-Iijima. You should check it out, which kind of details a lot about this particular concept. The idea is that you have a task board and you have a bunch of tasks. That task can be assigned to a human or can be assigned to an agent. The agent picks up the task, runs through the task. When it's done, it puts it in a particular status. The human can review and then provide feedback and can move along with it. The other piece is obviously events. I talked about that earlier on. So email received, run triage agent, whatever that might be, on a schedule, or it's embedded in a workflow. It is very interesting that as amazing as agents are, the most widely deployed agents are actually agentic workflows. So workflows that include agents. not everything needs to be an autonomous agent. Not everything needs to be. Some agents are perfectly fine as background agents that are part of your entire process. Wake up, do the work, go back to bed. So having them embedded in your workflow is something that can be interesting. Now, in all of these projects, what I have seen is that the people who won, or the projects that eventually got into production, were the people who were focused obsessively about solving the problem, about solving a specific problem, and that allowed them to scope very, very well. It allowed them to really hone in on that specific steps that they wanted to solve for and solve it. Those people who understood their context, they knew exactly what their data looked like, they knew what state it needed to be in. There were people who also took feedback very, very seriously. One of the things that I did recently with one of the projects I was working on was to build a feedback application inside the agent itself, so you could immediately give immediate feedback, which fed back into the system, give it all that feedback to continue to sort of self-correct and self-improve itself. And of course, the right people were in the room as well. Now, above all of that, I think the thing that struck me was also this beginner mindset, a willingness to experiment. I think this is very, very important because we are all learning how to do this at this point. No one can really claim that they're like a 10-year expert at building agents at this point, right? So we're all learning. So having that beginner's mindset, being experimental, is something that is so critical to being successful. But ultimately, agents scale when the context scales. So invest in your context, invest in making sure that all of the data is in the right order. Take that time to go clean up your data, clean up systems of records where information lives, and I think good things will happen when you do that. So that's my talk for today, and hopefully give you a good mental model of how to think about getting agents into production. Thank you.
Thank you, Ugo. All right, I now welcome all of our speakers to the stage, and we'll get started for our panel.
Right now it's like
free to grab some pizza and drinks. We'll just get rolling here to be time conscious. So for the panel, we're going to be moving through 3 different themes. So the first theme that we're going to be starting with is what separates successful AI deployments from failed ones. So starting off on your end, Jenna, when you first start working with a new brand, what do you find is missing typically in their data or context for a successful AI agent?
Yeah, usually when I'm having conversations with either prospects or clients, they actually have tons of data, but it's not connected. So the problem is that they've been using AI, trying to build AI systems, but all the data is fragmented. A lot of times they haven't even connected any MCPs or external tools to their cloud instance because either they don't know how or there are security hurdles there. So I think the first step there is use the data you have as soon as possible to connect to cloud, and that's really good low-hanging fruit. And the second thing is that a lot of people have knowledge and expertise that's undocumented because traditionally we're not used to agents scanning all of our workplaces and Slack. So a lot of people are having conversations in DMs that aren't being captured by always on agents, or we're having, unrecorded calls, fellow, that we're having conversations on calls and we're making leadership decisions, or we're vetoing things with the agents never getting that information because it's not connected. So connect your MCPs, make sure your tools are connected, and start having conversations in public channels, recorded meetings to make sure that everything's in a visible space and the agents are always learning.
Awesome, thank you. It sounds like you have really strong approaches for how to tackle that gap.
Yes, I'm very enthusiastic about that part of it.
Wonderful. Ugo, over to yourself. What do you find when you're deploying agents at scale the biggest misconception is?
So, can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. So the biggest misconception that I have seen is that you start thinking about scale first. You want to solve the problem at a very basic level and then almost sort of build on top of that. You don't want to, as they say, that is a cliche, boil the ocean, right? So when you solve the first problem, you look at how to scale it, then you go the next step, and the next, and the next. But I think sometimes people get bogged down in projects where they have chosen a very large scope and they end up firefighting for most of the project and not really getting to anything concrete. So, and one thing I've also noticed is that when you have that quick win, everyone tends to buy in and believe that this is something that is going somewhere, versus people start to lose trust, hope in what this is, and then it sort of fizzles out. So I think the biggest thing is more so trying your best to get those quick wins and gradually build on top of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So having a very focused problem statement to get things rolling, and then have scale as a secondary mission statement. Awesome. Okay, we're gonna flip this now to more of a success perspective. So over to you, Andy. What processes and habits do you find across teams generally drive successful outcomes and differentiate organizations from ones that maybe haven't adopted more, modern processes?
Wow, that's a really long question. Honestly, I would say buy-in, investment, and infrastructure. And what I mean by that is buy-in at all levels, not just the top. You have to get buy-in at the IC level and everywhere in between on the outcomes that you're looking for. Because if you don't get that buy-in from an IC, they're not going to want to go through the specific workflows that you want them to. And then if you don't have buy-in at the leadership level, it'll never get off the ground. When it comes from investment, you have to have a company that is willing to invest in not just the AI tools, but all the peripheral pieces to go with it. Because the cost is not just the tokens, the cost is the AWS infrastructure that you have to spin up so that you can have internal tooling, or the people that you have to hire to make sure that your data is in a place where you can actually leverage it for anything meaningful. So those are some of the things that we're doing at Knak to ensure that we can grow ourselves and be able to live in an AI, agentic, whatever you want to call it, world where we're not being left behind, we're pushing from we're leading from the front.
You mentioned buy-in. What's your, if it can be summarized, your leading strategy to secure that buy-in?
Oh, talking everyone's ear off all the time. Because like, I think when it comes to buy-in, it's like how often it's brought up. If you lose momentum, then you really lose the room. So ensuring that those that should be caring about it know about it and have access to it in order to either execute on it, use it, or be your champion internally for it.
That makes sense. Thank you. Hi, over to yourself. When you see an organization struggling to either build or deploy their AI, where do you see the problem typically lie? Would you say it's with the technology, the process, or the people?
So the question was, if an organization struggles with deploying agents to production, then is it the people or the process or the technology, right? I think at this point, the technology is pretty mature for anyone to build any sort of agents. Like you can build an agent with like 3 lines of code, and you've been able to do that since like 2023. We're talking about like LangGraph and whatever that came out a long time ago. The patterns changed so much. Like Hugo said earlier today, initially we built agents that run in like a small runtime, and now we're giving agents like computers to use. Like who knows what the next harness is going to look like? But at the same time, the harnesses are very much the same. If you were to choose Claude or Codex, they're literally the same thing. So a lot of times companies have pockets of people who are trying different things, and nobody agrees on like what is the right way to do it. So that's where like we see some of our customers struggle with, which is, oh, so-and-so is building a POC, and by the way, everyone's on POC, right? So so-and-so is building a POC over here using this technology, and then this other team is building something else over here. Is agent skill like what everyone is betting on as well? So like there's so many different emerging patterns. So our job usually going into these companies that are struggling, just to tell them, hey, we'll save you like a couple of weeks worth of work because we see this one pattern that got pushed to production. So you're just gonna follow exactly what we're gonna tell you, and then you'll be okay. Doesn't matter if you choose this one or that one. So again, my answer is it's just a lot of noise, and people are trying a bunch of different things, and there's really no consensus of like what is the right path to move forward to move to production.
So it sounds like you're saying almost a combination of people and process, but less emphasis on the technology.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame it too much on the people because it's the landscape of the industry that we're in that just breeds so many different ways to do the same thing. Of course, people are going to be confused.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious, opening that one up to the rest of the panel, are there any differing opinions, or are you seeing similar patterns?
I would say people. It's that like messy bit of like people inputting specific things for data that can be leveraged here or there, and training people on the specific process that you need them to follow. Because like you could probably have a perfect world where it's just all agents and like perfect data, but as soon as you put people into it, that's where it gets very messy.
I can appreciate that. What are you saying?
I would say that because workflow automation has been a thing for a long time. It's not like AI is it has changed what it's capable of, but it's not like a new automating things or processes is not something that's completely new. And so organizations that weren't adopting it before are now looking to adopt it with this, so they don't have like the muscle of how do we actually include these and put these into production. So
yeah, I think at Uber in your talk you touched on this, like everything is moving at such a fast pace that you really need everyone aligned, and the people, the way they approach things is going to change and processes are going to change, that you kind of just need alignment to bring it all together. And they're probably, all three of them are probably going to continue to be challenges ongoing in different ways. So I thought that'd be a fun one to tackle this evening. All right, we're going to move into our next theme, which is trust and adoption. Obviously, because we're discussing AI this evening, trust is a common theme across all of the fields that you each were speaking about this evening. So let's dive in. Ugo, on your end,
when you're working with an organization and you're starting a new project, what do you see as the strongest signs for readiness for adoption versus a company that may not be quite as ready?
Yeah, and I touched upon this a little bit in my talk, is people who understand what problem they're trying to solve, and they can explain it to you in a very simple sentence most of the time, right? So I think if you kind of look at a lot of organizations and what's driving AI adoption or what AI strategy is about, it's typically like some kind of mandates from the C-suites for everyone to adopt, AI and stuff like that. But people who adopt who look at it from the problem I'm trying to solve perspective usually are going to be successful because they feel that pain, they understand what it means, they feel it every single day, they understand what step 1 to step 10 or whatever it might be looks like. Those folks are typically going to be successful versus folks who don't quite know what problems they're trying to solve. Because obviously AI is not a silver bullet. So there are problems that you should say no to. This is a deterministic workflow that we should continue to do the way we're doing it, so we don't need to change anything. So when you start sort of messing with those things, then you create more confusion. So I think it's really that piece is the one thing I look forward to when I get into a discovery call. I'm trying to listen to what the champion or whoever it is saying, or what their motivations are. That typically tells me where this is headed to.
I really love that perspective. So it's almost having a pain point strong enough that creates that drive to solve it, and then AI adoption follows. Awesome. All right, so hi, assuming we have an organization that is ready to adopt AI, and let's assume they're already experimenting with AI, how do they take that leap from readiness and experimentation to genuine adoption and in a way that sticks with scale?
Cool. I guess we're going through some of that with customers right now. So the organization is ready to adopt. There's like top-down buy-in, and there's like some buy-in amongst like the people. That's great. What do we do now? Well, we have to scope out a few different things for people to build, right? We can just say, let's build this boil the ocean. Everything changed overnight. We can't do that. A lot of times it comes down to the first thing to do, which is your data ready? So data means context, right? If you don't have proper data governance or data management, whether that's, is the data accessible to like MCPs? Are you guys using Salesforce? Does everyone in the company have access to that through like MCP? Are you guys using some sort of data warehouse like Databricks or Snowflake? And by the way, Snowflake stocks came up, went up a lot because of all these enterprise AI use cases recently, like 25%. So it's happening, and like people start to realize that, before we can do anything fancy, we have to give people access to like different types of data sources. And when you dive into that, you talk about like data governance, policies, row-level security, all that good stuff. So it turns out our job is like mostly helping people scope out quick win projects, and then doing data engineering for like a while, and then paint a picture so that in the future they can aim at something that is our entire business unit, our entire organization can be semantically queried by anybody at the company and by any agents. But we have to work up to that. It'll take potentially several quarters to get there because of like pre-AI problems like data. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Over yourself, Sam. I want to talk a little bit about rollout strategies. So either specific to Coda or your experience at Fellow, how do you approach rolling out new features and capabilities? Do you typically roll out one at a time or multiple at a time, and how does that impact trust and adoption?
Yeah, so for Coda, we started with a very initial version. We were like experimenting with a lot of different things. But what's interesting is I think engineers, software engineers specifically, kind of got the early preview of like what these models will be able to do. And so like even last year, we were seeing these models being really starting to get really good at coding. And so the transition was all last year. Coda was kind of a new way of using it, but the actual shift I think happened through all of last year. And not by any, people were almost forced to not by their own will because these tools have gotten so good. Now there's kind of a pull instead of a push where we're seeing people want to adopt it. Whereas last year, I think it was more, here's something we need to like top down and try to encourage people to use this. And it's a bit of the opposite now where everyone finds it so useful that they're finding ways to bring it into their own workflows. So for Coda, yeah, we started with that initial version and then we added canvases later and it's evolved since then. And it's kind of a collaborative project now where anyone can really maintain it. Yeah.
Do you find it's changed greatly from your initial vision of what it would be?
It's evolved, definitely. I think the initial, this was around the time when like OpenCloud was getting super popular and we were seeing that and we were like, oh, how can we get some of these at our company? I think there's still, there's companies that are trying to do this and like to sell something that does this internally, but I think still it's good to, for that at least, for if you're trying to build a claw or these agents, it's good to try to build them yourself initially to understand what works and what doesn't, and to build that trust in what they're capable of, what they're not capable of, which pieces you can put them into, before relying on a solution, which you can do afterwards, but I think first experiment and understand how they work.
Makes a lot of sense, and looking forward to hearing how Coda grows in the next few months and years. All right, Jenna, over to yourself. What are the AI workflows that you notice with your brand building that really stick long term versus ones that are maybe more short-lived or aren't as used as greatly once the initial excitement wears off?
Yeah, I noticed a few patterns. So first of all, shiny object syndrome, people watch YouTube videos, TikTok videos, or scrolling on LinkedIn, and they see people sharing their own AI workflows, and it's very exciting and you want to build that for yourself right now. But it's not solving a need that you really have, or it's not customized for what you need in your organization, so you try it and abandon it. But that's a great way to get excited about AI, but I find that those don't last. What I suggest is that you think of the most painful part of your job right now, and I'm talking to clients every day or people from my LinkedIn DMs, and a lot of people don't love status updates, they don't love creating reports every week or spending tons of time on it. So I suggest building AI workflows there first. You can build AI workflows that do awesome competitive research, but be careful you're not building for something that you actually like about your job. I started a book called Buy Back Your Time, where it's like, be careful you're not hiring someone that will replace the part of your job you actually love doing, and then you're just left with all the stuff you don't like. So keep that in mind when you're building AI agents. Start with what you actually don't like to do, and those will definitely stick because they're actually helping you out and making you love your day more.
That's a great perspective and really anchoring to Hugo's theme of problem first thinking. Okay, lastly on this theme, over to you, Angie. Assuming that you see AI solutions that are not adopted, why do you think people stop using them?
It's a good question. Reusability, I think. Because I've built stuff that is used and adopted and stuff that isn't. And I found the stuff that has a pattern of reusability shows up more and more for a longer period of time versus just like a point solution that was created at a time for a problem that was there then. And it was a one-off project. So I think reusability is really what resonates in my head right now based on the question. A good example is some analysis that we were doing from Gong for very large swaths of calls and data. That, yeah, there's one use case for the sales team, there's one use case for product, there's one use case for CS, and you can leverage that data across the entire organization. And that's the kind of stuff that burns longer versus, I don't know, a random agent that like pushes something into Slack when a thing happens.
Makes sense, thank you. All right, moving on to our final theme, which is taking a look at the biggest opportunities ahead for AI over the next few years. And Andy, I'll go right back to you for this one. What capability do you think organizations are most greatly underestimating today that will become commonplace?
I think it's twofold. I think this is a really big question, and there's like a lot that's going on in AI, and like I don't even know what's going to happen next month, like not even like the next couple of years. But how I think about it is two things. I think local models are going to become way more prevalent in the coming future with the, like, because it was the Uber thing of it's really cheap inference of these language models, and then it's going to go up, and it'll just be cheaper to do it locally. And as well, the ability and the context you can give to a local model that is purpose-built for your business is one thing. The second thing is probably leveraging like really cheap models for things that don't need expensive things. Like some of the things, like some of the agents that I run that are my favorite are little haiku models that do these little things. And they're just so reliable, and they do the thing and they get it done. And I think people spend a little bit too much time at like the frontier models getting it done when it could really just be done with a really cheap.
Okay, and based on that, I'm curious, do you think that will change the AI products that organizations are delivering, or are you more leaning towards it's going to change how we're building them or how they're backed?
I'm thinking from like an internal perspective. And like if you were to ask me 3 months ago this question, maybe 4 months ago, I would have been like, oh, everyone's gonna have their own open claw, and like when you're onboarded to a new company, you're gonna be onboarding that open claw as well and sharing that context. And now I'm like, I don't think that'll happen. But yeah, I think from the internal perspective, that is like the best thing that I can say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sam, over to you again, possibly about Coda. Big fan. What responsibilities do you think an AI teammate would be trusted with 3 years from now? So something you maybe considered for a second with Coda and thought, no, we're not ready for that. But in 3 years, you may be willing to hand off to Coda.
Yeah, so today we kind of took a very guarded approach of like what we're allowing it to do, what channels we're letting it into, and kind of rolled that out. But I think probably in the near future, like in the next year or two, we won't. Right now, there's a lot of hesitation around shipping code that no one has actually looked at. I think like that when you have a closed loop, if you have something that has demonstrated that it works, it's been tested, you'll have something that follows up once it's been deployed and checks whether there's errors, looks at the logs, and iterates on it. I think there's going to be less. You will be able to trust it more with actually shipping things that haven't necessarily even been reviewed by a human, especially starting with small things. And then looking more broadly at AI teammates in general, not just Coda. And this we've been thinking a lot about because we're in the meetings space, but I do think like in the next 3 years, we're going to start seeing, you'll be discussing something in a meeting, I'll be talking to you, and we'll try to figure out what should happen or what we should do. And maybe we won't have a clear owner defined for it, and it'll flag that. And then by the time we reach the end of the meeting, an agent has already picked up on that conversation, done a first initial pass at it for us to review. I think that's going to become a lot more common, where you have this kind of an ambient intelligence, where it's working in the background, not something that you're actively looking at, but it brings you things. Yeah, I think that's again hard to predict because things change so fast that
That would be great though, finding operational inefficiencies before they happen.
Yeah.
Strong use case there. Awesome, thank you. All right, Ugo, over to yourself. I want to ask you about the future of agent networks. So what do you think the future in delivering agent networks might look like when we're talking about multi-agent systems across numerous business domains, interacting with one another, maybe with less of an orchestrating system? I don't know how many years down the road that is, but what do you think that might look like, and what do you think some of the biggest challenges with it might be?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because I think the concept of agent swarms has been kind of percolating somewhere. I think the way these harnesses work right now, they are remarkably great at planning, which is such a very important thing when it comes to multi-agent work. So, being able to sort of orchestrate between multiple agents, hand task over to an agent once it's done. We're seeing like incredible uptake in what they're able to do in that regard. So it's very, very difficult to predict how this goes. Because maybe the one agent harness can spin up like multiple agents. It's doing that right now already, right? Spin up multiple agents, get the task done. So I think I go back to thinking about getting a task done. I think we're going to see more and more tasks get uploaded to an agent harness, which could be a single agent or multiple agents working in tandem. But very difficult to think about beyond that level, what like an agent's network is going to look like. I mean, there are a few concerns already when we think about an agent network. I mean, we had the Moles bot. I think everyone was it Moles book. I think that's an experiment in what a multi-agent network could look like, and it didn't quite go well. We saw like some crazy stuff come out of that. So
have you tried Gastown or
no, I haven't.
the dynamic workflows?
Yes. Yeah. So I think anywhere headed in that direction, I think is going to be gradual, and I think the guardrails need to be tight. We need to invest more in guardrails, I think, before we can talk about like really extensive networks of agents let loose to go do stuff.
Yeah, it's a bold question for sure, and I think it's going to progressively build, and as it does that, it will take shape in hopefully a secure way.
Hopefully.
All right, Jenna, shifting over to yourself, I want to talk a little bit about human communication. So curious from your perspective, what aspect of human communication do you think AI is still lacking? And do you think it will eventually come around and adopt that missing piece? And if it does, what does that mean for brands?
I think we've seen like a recent shift in offline events and community becoming more popular because partly because of all the AI stuff out there, so people aren't really connecting online anymore because they don't trust if your LinkedIn post was AI generated. And people just want to meet in real life more because we're just so used to the internet just becoming this AI playground. So I don't think that AI will be able to completely replace that aspect, nor should it, because I personally want to talk to people face to face. But I'm hoping that, I think right now we're seeing people start to ignore AI-generated marketing content more and more, but that's because it's lacking that context, it's lacking taste, it's not very good. And I'm hoping that as people learn how to create these context libraries and they learn how to use AI more effectively to pull from their first-person data and all that context that they hold, that their AI content will get better and we will eventually learn to trust it and be able to communicate with each other even if it's AI assisted, because we know it's genuinely coming from experience and our expertise, and then we can still connect offline, which I hope and don't see AI replacing.
Yeah, that's a great response. I think even if we do overcome some gaps in how AI is communicating, it's in human nature to want to still just connect person to person. I was chatting with Nelda when this evening started, and she's creating these incredible videos recapping what's going on in AI, and I told her it was the funniest thing because you're talking about AI, but I want to hear you talk about it human to human. So I think that's gonna, continue down that road. All right, our final question that I have for this evening is for yourself. Hi. If we're having this conversation 3 years from now, what do you think would surprise this audience most about how AI has changed the way organizations operate?
I have an idea. So we have a few companies in our network that have been talking about there's a subset of customers they have that is going all out on building internal agents, and they don't have an appetite for buying SaaS products that have a user interface anymore. So if they were to buy a new product, it has to come with an MCP server, it has to come with a public API that they can just integrate with the Coda, whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So you want your Coda to be more powerful. You don't want your employees to go onto another dashboard to do an SSO and to do login. So essentially you want everything to one place. That coupled with a few other things that have been in development for a while, in terms of like agent-to-agent communication, payment, transactions and all that stuff, I
think 3 years from now, we'll be talking to agents in our day-to-day business without even knowing that. And we'll probably have a good time doing that too. Because agents, AI models in general, are very patient and they hopefully negotiate with good faith. People sometimes have a spectrum of where they could be in terms of whether or not they want your best interest in the negotiation. Amazon, for example, or I think Walmart, they have put in place an agent that does negotiation with their vendors, and from their survey, people actually prefer to negotiate with the agent than the human rep. So I think it's going to be a lot of agent-to-agent interactions in the future. Micro transactions, could involve payment. Companies are going to have to struggle with whether or not to build a product headlessly or to continue building a platform. I would be very curious to see where a fellow will be, whether fellow is going to be the same, meeting note taker, you go to a dashboard, you see the activities, or is it going to be an agent that will take over my entire company? Because most of the context comes from your meetings and your transcripts. So I think that's you guys' world domination plan.
Do you want to speak to that, Sam?
We've seen a lot of the market that is asking obviously for API, MCPs, CLIs. I do think that's where software, a lot of SaaS software is headed, is you're going to be using it through, your experience with SaaS is going to be mediated through this agent interface. So we'll start seeing things move that way, but I think people are still visual. There's something that you can actually just do quicker when you can see a layout, it's not all going to be text. So I think there's going to be some, the companies that do well are going to be the ones that adopt that agent first. We talked about building software, even internally we had our summit last week, and internally we were talking about we need to build software for agents as much as for humans. So that means good tooling, working well with open standards, which is funny because that's a lot of stuff that was engineers were saying before that we needed to do. We need to have a good API, but now we're doing that but for agents.
Awesome, thank you. All right, that wraps up the questions that I have for this evening. So I would love to open it up to the floor. If there's any questions, all we have are panelists. Yeah, please go ahead.
First of all, great job. I was trying to understand how any of this becomes a product. Because right now, you're describing everything that you build. It's very bespoke, and you need to do a ton of workflow mapping and all that kind of stuff. So I'd just be curious in the group, you can speak to how you're envisioning some of this becoming a product long term versus just something you build in-house or reach out to a consulting company to help you about that.
Anyone ready to take this one?
I'll jump on it just because I started my talk by saying everything I do is more about frustration of the tools that I'm working with, and that they just can't do the thing that I need them to do. And so honestly, anything that I build isn't about processing it. It's just about being able to improve the workflows that I'm working through, the workflows the teams that I support. Because I'm coming from the enablement perspective of enablement for me is helping teams to do their jobs better in any way, shape, or form. And right now, in this paradigm, it's leveraging AI and automations to get it done. And so for me, it's really about improving the outputs overall versus process.
I'll add something to that. So with Coda, it was something we built internally. At some point we were thinking, is this something that others would find useful? But we use Cursor, or some of the team uses Cursor. Cursor added their they call them their automations, which is kind of agents. Notion has agents as well that you can set up. Anthropic obviously added they added Claude managed agents, it's called, and I think OpenAI has one as well. So any kind of these products that if you're trying to do it as a product, it's going to be very difficult to find how to differentiate from some of these offerings where you have the model. And I think the actual difficult part is the implementation of it, putting it into the real world, putting it into real workflows and actually having it do real work. And so I think that, yeah, as a product, it may not make sense. Coda, at least, is not something that will be like productizing, but it is something that I would encourage people to try to do for themselves. And I think a lot of companies will, and we see a lot of companies doing that.
Yes, and I believe there's a mic coming for you.
Thank you for doing this. This is awesome. Question from your perspective, since you guys have done this already, for organizations that are still a little bit hesitant about fully implementing AI into their work processes and so forth. Before you take that giant big leap of finally adopting AI into your organizations, one of the biggest hurdles that leadership seems to have is this cost associated with AI and what value is it going to add versus investing those same amount of resources into human beings. So do you guys have any tips on how to evaluate that and de-risk it if possible from your experience? Because I'm all for AI, but trying to sell it to leadership sometimes can be a bit of a challenge.
I can take the cost angle to it. I think that cost is becoming something that is top of mind for everyone right now when it comes to AI. I think there's this concept of sovereign AI, which is beginning to sort of emerge. So we have Cohere, Mistral, and a few other open source companies that are beginning to create basically tooling that allows you to train your own model, with your own data hosted on your own infrastructure. And we're finding that that is becoming something that allows you to alleviate the cost concerns. In terms of evaluating what's right for sort of automation, because I think it's still automation. So I think AI makes it feel a little bit distant, but it's really automation. And I think the same principles apply, and everyone has sort of touched upon it. And I really love what you said earlier on about automating the aspects of your job you don't like. And I think that's a really good principle to take back to leadership, to say there are things that we do on a day-to-day that we just don't like doing because it's just a waste of time. Or it's just repetitive, it's not me using my brain in a certain way or whatever it might be. And those things are right for automation with AI and other automation tools. So I give an example earlier on for fund analysis. Nobody really likes reading like 10K reports or 10K reports or anything like that. So AI happens to be something that can, or your agent happens to be something that can read that. So I think it's finding those specific things that people don't quite like doing and starting with those. And I think you get buy-in faster that way.
I can answer the part where you asked about ROI for your executive team. There are a couple ways to think about it. So the way we approach our customers' problems is that we break it down into two buckets. So is it an efficiency problem or is it an excellency problem? So efficiency means you implement some sort of tool that allows you to do the same thing over and over faster. And excellency means, okay, so we get that out of place or out of the way and some of the things done. What are some of the things that you should be doing, you haven't been doing because you don't have time? If those behaviors start to emerge, then we ask our customers to note them down. And that is, okay, so that all of a sudden, instead of you filling out your CRM or whatever, you spend that time going to trade shows. That's like a completely different thing. Last quarter, we didn't do these things, but we knew we had to do them. This quarter, we can. So that's a clear win if you were to implement AI in the last quarter. And the second thing is, I was having this conversation with Ugo a couple days ago, actually. You just want a really good task board, and then you can tie your agents to those things. And it's easier for like a development or engineering team to do that because the tasks are pretty clear.
But if you're in design, if you're in something that has deliverables, if you can tie those agents into those tasks and track them using like Linear or Jira, you can kind of like aggregate them over time and see like how much influence do these AI tools have over like the tasks being done. And you can also like correlate the amount of time those tasks being done compared to them being done in the past. There's so many ways to do it, and you can also use off-the-shelf software to track usage, which is obviously not a good way to track, ROI. And finally, I want to say that if the organization wants to have an OKR about AI, you don't want to make it about AI. You want to tie it to your bottom line or whatever OKR you guys have, and then track it from there instead of like we want 20% efficiency or whatever. It's hard to track it, and also like why 20% or 30%? No, you're not, because you probably heard somebody said we want 30% more efficiency compared to what?
Of course, another question over here. Yeah.
Thank you for the session. It was amazing. My question is about AI agents in production. So when you deploy agents in production, especially in industries with very low risk tolerance like finance or healthcare, how do you measure reliability? How do you make sure that it's reliable? And is it even possible with today's agents?
So when it comes to measuring reliability, I think it starts way before it gets into production, right? You want to do as much evals, as they say. And I think you have to sort of almost build your way back from what those evaluations. It's like test-driven development, right? You define what good looks like, and then you walk your way back from there. You need to have really good observability, because things are going to break, things are going to go wrong, so you want to be able to catch them when they happen. In terms of style of evaluation, in terms of whether this needs to go into production or not, I think people have different styles. You might have a human as the judge, you can have LLM or even deterministic code as the judge before you put things into production. But I think you have to have, constantly evaluate and see where the levels are at. And then there are certain use cases that absolutely need a human in the loop before they go out. So having someone who's going to take a look at this draft that has been created, and we use the word draft a lot in a lot of things. The AI creates a first draft so that you can put the rest, you take the rest of the line. So those are some of the thoughts that I have about that question.
Yeah, and I would just add on the evals, just the double importance of that. Because when you're putting something into production, yes, you need to be monitoring, you need to add that loop to make sure that if something breaks, that you're fixing it at the source. Or if you have a bad evaluation, that you add that to your training set. But the other reason is also, cost. Or when a new model comes out and the model costs twice as much, is it going to be twice as good for your use case? Or can you actually use haiku for this agent and it'll work fine? Or even open source models. So without the eval, you don't have any of that, and so that you need to start there really to have a good idea of how it's working.
And just to build on that, I might go through the whole panel for you, but just to build on that, a really great approach is progressive autonomy. So deploying agents, if your agent, you think of it as they can make a recommendation, make a decision, or take an autonomous action. You can start on the lower end of that range, and then through evals, measure your system quality, and if you're seeing quality outputs in the recommendations it's making, you can then take the next step to allowing the agent to decide, and then again, you can assess how they're performing at that level, and then move them on to autonomous action or action with human in the loop. Okay, I think there was another question in front. Yes, please go ahead.
Sure. First of all, great event. Thank you. So, was wondering, out of the collective experience of the panel, in terms of automating workflows, when you're...
So the question is, when automating workflows, I've heard that the process where you don't necessarily sort of copy the human version of it, but you rather redesign it to be more machine friendly, it has been more effective. but this is kind of hearsay that I read from a few different articles. Just curious, based on the experience, like how much of it has been workflow analysis and then just implementing it by using AI instead of humans to do it, versus how much of it is actually business process design from scratch almost.
So a lot of my work I find is when I do AI audits and I'm working with someone to turn one of their existing workflows into an AI workflow, they'll have a lot of light bulb moments where they're like, this is probably not a necessary step. I'm not doing this as efficiently as it could be manually right now. So a lot of the added benefit of creating these AI workflows is you're kind of auditing your actual business processes at the same time and maybe even rebuilding them. So I think that's a great point, that it sometimes shouldn't just be a one-to-one step of like human now with AI. It's a good opportunity to make sure that you're doing things as efficiently as possible, because maybe something you're doing now isn't necessary and it'll cost a ton in tokens and you can just get rid of it.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, great session. Glad to be here and hearing so much inspiring things. My question is about, in practice, around benchmarking of what your companies currently do. How much % of work do you allow agents to do independently without a human in the loop, and how do you see that evolving?
Well, okay, let's think. I think, it's really going to depend on what the solution is, would be my initial perspective. Does anyone want to take this on?
Yeah, I'll just speak to it quickly. I have not got to a place where I feel fully comfortable with all of the workflows that I'm currently running being without human in the loop. In that even the ones that are like looped and autonomous to themselves, I still audit on occasion, because there is things and changes that happen in code or production that can affect it in different ways, that you might find that something that has been running like a top for a long time now is just burning tokens because of some issue. And so I haven't got to a point of fully trusting it, but we're going to panelists to be able to say something here.
I mean, we had a funny example, not funny in retrospect, but with Coda, there was a bug in the way that we had done the heartbeat, where it was kind of extending the context window over time, and somebody on the team had added a workflow for it where when somebody shipped a feature, it would shout them out and give them like kudos, and it was running every couple minutes to check, and so it was actually adding to that, and we noticed a few days later when we looked at the cost, and it had racked up a lot. So yes, there's cases where you need to be auditing, you need to be checking, spot checking at least. But I think a lot of easier, maybe customer success customer questions can be answered. A lot of like the more simpler cases can be done without any oversight or without any with the guardrails in place, without any checking from a human.
I want to add to that. So all the workflows that we have at our company that are read-only, we usually just let it rip autonomously. If it's a write task, then we would have human in the loop. So it's like one door, two doorways decisions, right? Like if it's a read task, you're not going to be catastrophic if something goes wrong. If it's a write task, then a lot of times it could be catastrophic. So that's where we would see, decide whether or not we want to let it just run autonomously. But I do have Codex took over my Mac Mini, and I think it's very dangerous. But it's running it right now, and it has taken over all my social media. If you're talking to me on LinkedIn, you're not talking to me. And it reads all my emails, it runs on schedule. I think over time, people are going to be more comfortable doing that. But it's not replying to you, by the way. That's why. That's the one thing that I'm not letting it do, which is it can read everything, but it can't reply.
I want to add to Knak, because I do also do that kind of stuff, is it's about your appetite for risk. So I personally am willing to take a little bit of risk if it means that I can do a lot more faster. So sometimes it does screw up and I expect that. But when you're working with a human, it's the same thing. You don't just fire someone after the first mistake. You train them and then you try again and you maybe audit them a little bit more frequently for short term after. But yeah, there's been some cases where my AI agent has said the wrong thing and I just go in there and say, oops, I'm transparent about it, like, oops, that was my AI agent, they said the wrong thing, here's the actual right answer, but I'm off to fix that, so sorry about that. So if you're comfortable with that, which I am to a certain degree, as long as it's not like a catastrophic result, then expect that.
Jenna, how often do you see that happening?
Once a week.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Any more questions? Yes, please go ahead.
So, amazing session, loved it. And so my question is specifically to Jenna. So you mentioned you were making your own agents and you were posting them in LinkedIn, and I suppose that were like all of those were your personal projects. And now it's your full-time, right? So my question is, how much has it changed in terms of processes, tools, limitations while working for people or clients? And if you could suggest someone who's taking the same path, how much it has challenged you, like how much you had to broaden your knowledge, and like how much it challenged you, honestly. Like, we really want to know how much you pushed yourself out there to make it work.
Yeah, 100%. So this time last year, I was not technical. I never even touched code or anything like that. So I've learned this all in a year. Life has changed a lot, so it's been very rewarding, but you do have to keep up quickly. But to answer your first question about my personal workflows versus, working one-to-one with clients now, that goes back to what I just said. I have a higher appetite of risk for myself. But, clients are not as down for letting their agents run because they have a bigger brand to protect and customers to protect. So one thing I learned going into it at the beginning is to be aware of the security hurdles, which I went in there and I was like, okay, we're going to build all these things, it's going to be great. Security said no. And that was my first experience working one-to-one with clients. So make sure you're coming in with lots of information about, if it's read only, then they're usually more comfortable with that. And if you're going into right territory where it takes an action on behalf of you, then tell them, what kind of other information it might have access to, personal information about customers or the organization. Make sure you know this before you start building, or you might waste a lot of time, which I did, and I had to learn that hard lesson. And as far as growing my LinkedIn account, I make these lead magnets pretty much like once a week, and they get between 2,000 to 10,000 comments, and I make them in an hour. And it has the whole reason why I grew my business so fast. So I would very much recommend creating these context libraries and finding your own point of view and your own experience and turning it into a repeatable format on LinkedIn as an actual template or resource that you can share. Because people really want something that's like plug and play. And I find that helps to build trust with your audience fastest.
Okay, we have another question over here.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about cost of maybe not maintenance, because we deploy the agent, it's easy to deploy the agent, right? Make it running, but then the technology evolves quite fast in the AI space, right? We need to keep up with that, like updates, new models on the jets. How in enterprise deployments, you solve those problems, or maybe what part of the budget is allocated for this type of the work? Is there any a rule that you follow?
I think first and foremost, for organizations who are trying to solve a particular problem, they can ascribe a certain value to what that problem represents to them. So, as an example, a marketing use case might not be the same as something that is more operational to you. So I'm working with an organization as an example who their core business is processing medical records. That is the core business, so that has to work, right? And you have to look at how are we doing this before, we're outsourcing it, we're paying X amount, and now we're trying to do this with AI, and how much does that cost? So there's always that conversation to be had you know, most consultants would do this with you and kind of get into a room, figure it out, put it on a budget, and kind of explain to you what the cost should look like. But I think the beauty of what's happening, I think I was discussing this earlier, we started off as an example with a 237 billion parameter model as a starting point. And once we sort of got to, okay, end-to-end works, we were able to go back and refine and fine-tune a 7 billion parameter model that was able to still do the same task. So the beauty of it is, whatever that budget is right now can still go down, whatever that cost is can still go down, but you have to continuously refine and find areas to cut costs. But it's this topic poll, but again, it's a value question really in terms of like how you kind of figure out what the budget is. And some people might see maybe a separate process to automate as something that doesn't add that much value to them, and they might not ascribe the same, they might not be willing to kind of allocate the same budget to that particular task. So it's that kind of conversation that we have with organizations and determining what kind of budget they allocate to a certain project.
Any more questions? One more over here.
Thanks, everyone. We're hearing a lot about evals on one side, and then I also feel that there's a push for making people AI champions and allowing people to build things that solve their problems and build proof of concepts. How do you go from those proof of concepts from non-engineers to systems that have evals that you can test that work? Are you seeing people within the organization that aren't engineers building those evals and evaluating those? Or are you jumping in with engineers to take something that wasn't kind of built with all that ahead of time and kind of backfilling that?
That is why we have I had that we're hiring slide on at the end. I think there's some. So one thing we thought of was to do an AI council, which is like a group of 3 or 4 people within the company that we identified as having the technical skills to be able to actually put these into production to build the evals. And that's still at the kind of early stages, so I don't have any better answers than that, except yes, it's important, and there's a gap there from like, yes, a prototype that somebody has put into place and making that repeatable with evals, the pain point that we have today.
Yeah, I'll take it quickly. Coming from a place of like always never being like highly technical, in that understanding code and being able to write code, coming into Knak and being able to build with Claude Code quickly and prototype very quickly was great. And then what helped me was working with the devs and the engineers that were willing to tell me, it's like, hey, you actually don't need to do it that way. And a really great example of you doing it this way is using a helicopter across the street. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. I don't need to over-engineer, overbuild. And so being able to rely on those folks to guide the way, because you can do so much with Claude Code, but there are a lot of efficiencies and knowledge that devs and engineers know that a layman might not just know how to do from the start.
I just want to add to that as well, because I think it's such a very important point. One of the things AI does is obviously to democratize access to doing some awesome stuff. And I've seen some amazing builds from people you would classify as non-technical. And honestly, I would say that right now, domain knowledge is very critical to building something that is valuable. So when people can prototype and bring their domain expertise to things, it makes the life of the engineer much easier, because what you're basically optimizing for is, can it run at scale, is it efficient, things of that nature. So I think very important to continue to encourage folks within our organizations to to continue building now that it's much easier to build, because you can't, it's not always easy to replicate that through a Jira board with tickets trying to explain the context of someone's domain expertise.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm from a longer-standing company than I think probably many of you out there are. So we have some technical debt and a lot of business systems. And my question to you is, what percentage of your businesses run on the more traditional business systems? Like, what does your tech stack look like? Do you still use a financial tool? Do you still use a CRM? Or are you building most of this stuff inside, since you can be a little bit more fluid?
Oh man, that's a really good question. There is a really great debate about build versus buy, and I think like infrastructure, you buy, your intelligence you can build, and there's a lot of variation between there of like what makes sense for what purpose. But I'm definitely not trying to remake a CRM or replicate Snowflake or anything like that. But when it comes to understanding our customers from our point of view and our context, that is something that we can build internally. And I wouldn't go and pay someone else to do that if I can do that myself. Because the context that we have internally is just so much greater than anyone that might come to you and say, hey, we can do this for you. You work in what space? SaaS space in general. So this is like the blanket way we're going to do it versus like a highly custom that you can do yourself.
I want to add to that as well. So I'll tell you what stack we use at our company, AGIV Industries. We put all like 90% of our stuff on Notion. I don't know if you're familiar with Notion. People call it a note taker, but it's technically a database. And you can do automations. Now you can put agents on it. You can use Claude agents to enter Notion and do a bunch of stuff in there. So we've been able to build our CRM, our accounting, our meetings, note-taking stuff, our context graph of every single customer and conversations we have with them. So every time I hop off a call, my agent will look at the transcript and then goes inside of the customer's page in our Notion, update only the things that we care about them. So over time, everybody on the team, if they wanted to continue the conversation, they could just go to that one page about the company. And even we go down deep to even the level of if we were to talk to like a VP or whatever at that company, it writes down their tone of voice, what they prefer the communication preference looks like, whether they're like brevity or like verbose, where they're from. It's kind of like over the top, but essentially, we want everybody in the company to go into every conversation with complete context about who they're talking to and how they should be talking to them and what was the last thing to talk about. And yeah, so we built everything in Notion. The reason why we use Notion is because it's like that middle point between engineering and non-technical people. So Notion, they call it internally, Notion, they call it Lego blocks for building whatever you want. Recently they made it so that their platform is now a developer platform, which essentially just means that your agents can interact with Notion freely. Just like how I think Fallow is also thinking about building a product for agents. We call it agent experience. So yeah, you can go crazy like us and just build everything internally. Or you, like you said, like any infrastructure, you buy it, intelligence and context, you can build that yourself. Yeah.
All right, last call for any final questions. Okay, I think we will probably wrap up there then. A huge thank you to our panelists for speaking this evening.
if you guys give us some feedbacks after this, because this is our first event. The second event will be in July, and it depends on whether or not you guys like it. So we would really appreciate it if you give us some feedbacks, what else you want to hear about. If you do want to speak at our events, come talk to me or Nelda or any of our team members or Tori, and we'll put your name down, and then maybe you can speak at our next event. We have a community as well, so like it's on LinkedIn and Slack. Is there anything else you want to
post on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so recently we have Nelda had bought a banner for us, so if you guys want to take photos, please tag us in social media, and our company's name is just AGIV Industries Canada. The reason why I say all this is because new initiatives and new meetups, they're very fragile, and it really requires the entire village to keep it alive. So if you do like this, please do all the things that I just told you, and maybe we'll have another one in July and another one in August. And I think we have big plans for this year. We're going to have a conference with content like this. So thanks everybody on the panel. Thank you, Tori, for doing an amazing job emceeing this. And yeah, that's the event. Thank you guys for coming.